fathers to my daughter and just my entire life, but particularly during the AIDS crisis, when it was one of the many smears was that I had not been good to gay people, that I had told gay men not to take their medicine, or that they got AIDS because they weren't spiritual enough or anything like that. Of all the lies that have been said about me, and there have been quite a few at this point, that was the one that insulted me and hurt my feelings the most.
Wow, that hit. Sorry. It really has been disgusting the way you've been smeared, but
Why do you think it is?
you can't be bought. And I think that's really obvious. The things that you share with people would scare a corporate establishment. You know, a study came out in 2013 that said we'd been operating as an oligarchy, for a democratic oligarchy, for the past 8 years at least, or something along those lines. And candidates like you are a huge threat to that.
It's but the question I have though, and why even say why do you think it is because there are people who agree with what you just said, who theoretically would want a candidate who says the things that you and I are talking about. And they have been the source of some of the lies and the smear. That's what I can't understand. It's almost like there are people who want to hear a candidate say what I say, but I don't know. Maybe Carlos, do you know? Is it people that they want a different package or something? I'm not sure. There's a mystery there to me.
I think one thing that I've seen online in the past 24 hours actually are people who are genuinely progressives. They like all of your policy stances, but they don't trust you.
I
And I think
know.
that they're sort of
I
looking for
know.
like a warrior or an angry Bernie type of person.
It's really interesting what you're saying. Yeah, they don't trust me. And it's like, what? Well, if you think that I'm the person that has been portrayed and the mischaracterization, listen, I've seen myself written about in ways that have made me think I wouldn't like me either if I was that person.
I want to clarify real fast that I was not saying Bernie is angry, but I think that they trust this
No, but
presentation of someone.
I think if an older white man, I'm Jewish and Bernie is Jewish. Bernie is a personality type that I grew up with. And so his anger, I'm very comfortable with, his outrage. It's like a personality type. He reminds me of all my uncles and my father. But a woman, if she expresses moral outrage, I think it's more than that, though. I don't know what it is, but there's some deep misogyny there because I don't know, like you said, what is it they want me to be that I'm not? But once again, if they think I told gay people not to take their medicine during AIDS, or if they think that I'm just they always say she's a grifter, and I want to say, what's the grift? I've written books, I've sold books, and I've started nonprofit organizations. Where's the grift? I'm trying to figure out what's the grift.
They think it's books, but I don't think books make that much compared to what you have to
Well,
spend on a
no, I'll tell
campaign.
you what it is about. But the part about books that's so weird. First of all candidates wrote books in the last season. That's what you're supposed to do, actually, to show people what you believe. Now, the one who had a bestseller was not me because of all that stuff that was said about me. The one who had a bestseller was Andrew Yang. And it was a great book. War on Normal People was a really good book. But I didn't hear anybody complaining that he was selling books. They all had books, actually. And
And I just,
in my career, the way to sell books, first of all, I'll tell you this, in my field, the way to sell books is to never mention politics. That's number one. And number two, the way to sell books is to go on a book tour, not to run for president. I can tell you that.
I just want to add one of my favorite. I want to dissect this real quick from my point of view, and I know Marianne and I have talked about it. But one of my favorite quotes that describes what's happening here, that drives me crazy in politics, is we continue to expect the same people that drove us into the ditch to get us out of the ditch. And I think that's why I trust Marianne. She's not one of those politicians that has driven us into the ditch. She has a different point of view. And the other thing that makes me believe that this is misogyny at its best, I was talking to a progressive not long ago here on social media that was saying why they're not going to vote for Marianne or whatever. And I said, did you vote for Bernie Sanders in 2020? And they said, yes, absolutely. And I would do it again. And I said, what's stopping you from supporting, what is actually stopping you from supporting Marianne? I just want to understand where you're coming from. And they couldn't really pinpoint anything. And I just feel like, from my experience as a cisgender man in politics, women definitely get treated differently in politics. We have seen it on the campaign trail. This is not new to us, but it's really being exhibited within our own left. And it's actually heartbreaking. Marianne brings in many ways, better policies than half of the progressives in Congress right now. They have compromise on some serious issues. So, to me, I always go back to that famous quote that Marianne uses on the campaign trail when she's speaking that, you know, we're expecting the same people that drove us into the ditch to get us out. And it's like, it's just, to me, it's insanity. So
But
obviously our country is in a different place today and we need better approach.
I want to go back to what you said, and maybe somebody else on the
Yeah.
call has some ideas, because what you just said is so true. So he voted for Bernie. He sees that my policies are the same as Bernie's, but he wouldn't vote for me, and he can't pinpoint it. Has he ever heard me speak?
So I know that it was a back and forth that several of us was having, trying to just give them some links and videos to watch, speaking about left politics, about left policies. And I think what it came down to at the end of the day, I think he blocked some of us that were following him and trying to understand where he was coming from. And everybody was this is something I love about your followers and people that are supporting you. They're very respectful and loving and caring about everybody, including people they don't agree with. And I really think that it came down to misogyny. I think some people still to this day have a hard time thinking that a woman should be in charge. It really, there was a couple of comments he made that I'm not even sure they're appropriate to even say in this conversation, that it just seemed very misogynistic. And it's not, I mean, me on the campaign trail in New Hampshire, we have heard it a couple of times. So I think
What was it? What was it, Carlos?
so they were talking about he kept saying she has no experience. She has no experience. And I'm like thinking to myself, well, what is the experience that you need for her to be able to lead this country? And then she,
Nobody said that about Andrew Yang. They said Andrew was a businessman. As someone
yeah.
who's written books for 40 years and taught classes and stuff, I'm as much of a business person as Andrew is. Andrew never served in office, and you never heard that about Andrew. You never heard that about Andrew. Nobody ever said that about Andrew.
We've had some people who've requested to speak since before this was the topic. If you have requested to speak and you have a specific response to why did they see Marianne as a grifter, why did they not take her seriously, if you could use the emoji button to raise your hand, I'd love to give you a chance to talk.
Yes, we have about 10 people. We can go as they came in order. So Eric, oh wait, I think we have Rob first. I don't know. Do you know how to allow the request? Okay, here it is.
Yeah, just a second. You said Rob first?
Yeah, Rob raised his hand. I saw that. So,
Hi, Rob.
Hey everyone. Hey Marianne. How are you all doing this evening? Good to be with you. So I would just like to address first the question at hand and then add some thoughts onto that. I mean, yeah, we all have to stand up and call misogyny for what it is. There is an unequal standard that's at place, and we need to speak to it as often as possible because that speaks truth to power. And going along with some of that, I just wanted to bring up a historical parallel that I think we can all reflect on. During the Gilded Age, there was a man named Anthony Comstock who became famous for censoring materials, being anti birth control, anti abortion, anti suffragette. He was against the progressive Margaret Sanger. There was even a word created, Comstockery, used by George Bernard Shaw in various theatrical productions. And so this parallels our modern day conservative cancel culture. And I'm wondering, how can we unite the LGBTQ plus community, the pro-choice community, women in general, and then throw in the overall anti-censorship styling of the anti-surveillance movement, even the anti-drug war movement, so that we put privacy matters and we protect the privacy matters that the Warren Court enshrined in constitutional law in the 1960s. So that's my input. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rob. Marianne, would you like to respond?
No, I mean, that's what we would all love, of course. But, even when you talk about all those different groups, it seems to me on the left, even more than on the right, there's such, they often say the left is a circular firing squad. I mean, getting all those people to be willing to work with each other is not an easy task. Even like with what you're talking about me, it's like, what do you guys want here? Are you really interested in building power? Because when you're interested in building power, you're interested in alliances and you're more interested in joining with people who agree with you than you are in uh, tearing other people down. I mean, so many people on the left tear people down who agree with them. So when you were talking about, what it will take, it will take some psychological changes inside ourselves to just be more merciful and open to not just to the people who don't agree with you, but to the people who agree with you, which is what's just shocking in the world today. But it's what's happening.
If you have a few more minutes, I know there are a couple people who
Yeah,
wanted
I
to
do
respond to that
actually,
topic.
because I'm on my cell phone. I didn't know it was going to be on my cell, and even though I'm leaving, I can still, I can still be on the phone. So I might lose you at one point inside an elevator, but other than that, we're fine.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this with us.
Oh, thank you.
I'm going to add a couple people who requested a while ago that are actually in a group chat with Carlos and I know that they both have a response to this topic. Hi, Rainer.
Hi.
The floor is
Oh,
yours.
thank you. Hey, Marianne. What I'm gonna do is just sort of propose a hypothesis that's coming for me around the topic we were talking about earlier. So I was
Okay.
saying to another member on the call that something in me senses that your running is kicking up a lot of the sort of unhealed parts of the country. And so my
That's
hypothesis,
what I think too.
yeah, my hypothesis has to do with the fact that when a truth teller enters the scene, usually what's happening is she is revealing a lot of the darker underbellies of, the collective as well as of individuals' lives that they would almost not prefer to look at. So that's kind of my hypothesis, and it sort of comes from this archetypal study that I've been doing over the last year on this goddess named Eris. Are you familiar with her?
Goddess who?
There's a goddess. There's a Greek goddess whose name is Eris. She was the goddess.
No.
Ugh, there's so much in this story that I feel like is relevant. So she was the only god or goddess who was not invited to the wedding of Peleus and Thetis, essentially. So all the gods got together, and everybody was invited except for her. And she threw an apple into the wedding, and it basically started the Trojan War. Long story short, without getting into all of it, based on my study of this particular goddess, she wasn't discovered. Her name is Eris, and there's actually a planet that corresponds to her. She wasn't discovered until 2005, and in the astrological tradition, it said that new aspects of consciousness usually correspond with the astronomical discoveries of planets. So I guess what I'm submitting is that I think something to do with her, and my language for her is she really is a truth-telling activist. But when a truth-telling activist enters the scene, what often happens is she ends up exposing and revealing all the unhealed parts of any given system. So my hypothesis is that a lot of what we're seeing around the smears, around this and that, of course, establishment forces have always been interested in suppression of anti-establishment voices, but I especially think that when a person who has done their work, who has done their measure of healing, who is doing their measure of truth-telling enters the scene, it inevitably kicks up a lot of chaos within the system. And so I know it's not pretty, but I'm sort of trying to watch all this and go, this might be part of the process. This might be part of the process. Can we hang on, as we're watching all the things fly?
I'm fascinated by the things you just said. And also, there was something that happened. And by the way, I'm going into an elevator in a minute. So if I lose you, then I'll get back on. So, but there was this show, something, the Left Wing Mafia or something. And there were about 6 people on, and they were all people who were like, they're on YouTube and stuff talking about left-wing issues. And they were talking about my candidacy. And most people had said, well, she's certainly not going to win. It's just unbelievable. Republicans would never talk that way about a candidate they wanted. But hear me? Oh,
Yeah,
We
can
got
hear
you.
you.
can't.
We really lost the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
No, we can hear
Because
you.
We've got you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm back. Anyway, and then, but no one was rude. And then somebody said, well, you guys have been nice. And I could tell that they were going to start. And there was a woman. And you could see it in her body language. She could hardly contain herself. She wanted to start talking. And I could tell, you could just tell from her body language, it wasn't positive. And I turned it off because one of the things that I have promised myself this time is I just can't do it. I can't read all that stuff. It's like there is a woman who sends me a lot of tweets, and she started sending some negative ones. I said, there's no value here in me knowing about this. I know it in broad scope, but I can't allow myself to just look at all of it. But looking at her body language, I felt exactly what you just said. I thought, this is not even about me. This is about something that I represent for this young woman that is not even me. So I guess, I guess the question is, will that be something that transforms during this campaign, or is it something that will sink this campaign? Um, I that's the only question. But I do think when I see some people that their reactions to me, both positive and negative, have more to do with them than it has to do with me.
I think you're absolutely right. In case we do lose you, I wanted to interject real fast with a question for you to ponder. If this campaign does not lead to Marianne Williamson in the White House, and it does not lead to a long-term change in our political system, what do you hope it might change within the people who do follow you on this path and who are with your campaign? What do you hope they take away in the end?
Well, this is why we continue. I think we've done already in 1 week. We have created in the field a conversation which needs to be had. And conversation expands thought. And I think the very fact that, and Carlos, you can weigh in here because you've heard me, in everywhere I've spoken in New Hampshire, I feel we're already having some conversations, submitting possibilities that people had begun to think were not even an option. So, in that sense, we're already successful.
If anyone
And,
has questions they would like to leave for Marianne in the chat, if we have time to get to them, I'm happy to go through that list of responses. Use the button in the
and I
bottom
know,
right-hand corner.
Tim, you and I will get a lot of opportunities to chat about this with the rest of the crowd that is here. So I want to give it some time for everybody to talk. But I just want to add that, you know, in New Hampshire, what we're seeing here, the transformation that is happening with Marianne in the race, it's unbelievable. The amount of people that are engaging and wanting to host house parties, it's really exciting. So I really don't see any other option but Marianne really winning the state of New Hampshire. So I'm really excited about that. And we're working really hard. We have a phenomenal team on the ground. And Marianne, every single time we put her in front of people, they just love her. They changed, their minds changed. We had a lady that drove from Vermont just to hear a presidential candidate, and she left saying, I'm so glad I drove down, that I did not listen to the media about Marianne. I love her right now, and I'm going to vote for her when our turn comes in Vermont. So, you know, this is what we're hearing over and over again. So I'm really optimistic. We have state representatives. I spend at least one day a week at the state house, and all the state representatives, senators were talking about Marianne's speech at the state house, which it was honestly one of the best speeches I've seen in that state legislature happen. And it was actually a really cool experience, one of a kind. I've never seen it happen in the state. So a lot of people, we're making a lot of new allies, a lot of new friends. So I just think that this is the campaign that they're going to underestimate. And that's fine. I think I always love an underdog, and I love an underdog story. And I think Marianne has everything that it takes to not only win New Hampshire, but win every single state necessary for her to become the nominee. And, you know, let's not forget that Joe Biden right now, I believe it was like 70% or something around that number of Americans that actually want a different option. You know, so I just think this is our time. And I think everything with our work and our thoughts are lining up exactly where they need to be. But I'll let it so that we can ask some other people to ask some questions. I think they're all interesting, and I appreciated all the thoughts that have come. So how about, I know Eric wanted to ask some questions. So can you allow Eric to ask a question? Eric, you have the floor. I know you're connecting and it might take a second, but the floor is yours.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Awesome. Yeah, Marianne, I just want to first say thank you so much for doing this. You know, being available, accessible is like, actually, I'm working on a campaign in Springfield, Massachusetts right now. We're trying to elect a new mayor, and one of the things we're running on is transparent government, and accessibility. So again, thank you so much for doing this kind of stuff.
Thank
Again,
you.
yeah, absolutely. Going back to, I think, some of the conversation we were talking about earlier with the left just being completely disorganized. You know, those four people that you saw on a Zoom call with one woman being like just uncomfortable, a lot of those people were hardcore Bernie supporters who I watch their shows to this day on YouTube. And a lot of it has to do with, one, maintaining their audience, getting their clicks, and I think there is a part of them that is still not over what they did to Bernie in 2016, and part of what they did to Bernie in 2020. And they're also not over how a large factor of Bernie's audience was not a large factor of Joe Biden's a large factor of mainly the Democratic Party was just ready for something normal and not ready to take the leap to Bernie. And I think they're upset from that too. And so it's like two election cycles where there's these online personalities that take up much of the left that cannot let it go. They can't see anybody else stepping into that space, and it's one, very unfortunate, because they're only adding to the smugness that I think the left is starting to you know, give out to other people that tune into their own shows. But I will say, in the comments on a lot of these channels, a lot of them are saying, wait, why did you dismiss Marianne just then? Why did you just say
Thank
she
you.
has
I
no
have
chance?
noticed that too. I have noticed that too. Um, yeah, I have
Yep.
noticed that, and it's been very gratifying to me. Um, yes, you're absolutely right. The left is becoming known for this kind of smugness
Yep.
and the purity testing and I said about one person today, I said, they all claim to be anti-capitalist, but they're acting like a bunch of capitalists in the worst way. They're just
Correct.
about their brand.
Oh my
They're
God,
just
so
trying to
true.
sell their product, their brand,
Yep.
and because if they were really talking about what it will take to turn this country around, they would at the very least be having a more serious conversation about
Yep.
a campaign like this, whether it was mine or anyone else's. But I also I have seen much of what you just said.
And I would say let your supporters push back on those comments, because the more you look at that stuff, the more it's going to drive you crazy.
Yeah, I do very little. I mean, I don't look at the really negative things, but I have noticed on a couple where there were, well, even like the thing I just said to you,
Yep.
described once he said, well, y'all are being nice, and I saw her body language, I turned it off. But there have been some things where I've just noticed comments, and yeah, and also what Carlos said, and I didn't. If you're on my Twitter, last night I posted a TYT interview I did with John Yadarola
Yeah.
last night, and when he asked me about it, I said, what I've learned, and this goes back to what Carlos was saying. The this campaign is not being waged. Twitter is a different universe than what's happening on the ground.
So true.
On the ground, they're not having that conversation. They're wanting to know how they might get health care. They're wanting to know how they might send their kids to college. They're wondering how they might have a livable wage, why they might find a place to live. The American people are not as bitchy as they appear on Twitter,
Yep. So true.
you know?
Yep.
And that's why when people asked me last time, what was it like? I often said, for me, it was a 50-50, half brutality, half exhilarating. And what Carlos and I experienced in New Hampshire, being on the ground, or even talking to you guys tonight, actually talking to people about things that matter. That's exhilarating. This is wonderful. We're talking about something that matters. And then there is that other stuff, and it's that bipolarity of the American mind. It's who we are today, I guess.
Well, thank you so much for taking my comment. And if you're ever in Springfield, Mass, I will host a house party.
Well, I'm sure, Carlos, I'm sure wants to hear all about it because, Massachusetts and it's all in there together, right, Carlos?
Absolutely. Eric, you and I will have to speak. I didn't know you were in Massachusetts, but now I do.
That's right, Western Mass. The forgotten part of Mass is Western Mass. So come through.
I grew up in Massachusetts. I grew up in Haverhill, Mass.
Oh, gotcha.
So my first date, my high school years, all of that was in Massachusetts. So I am excited to chat about Mass at some point.
Thanks again, Marianne. Appreciate it.
Thank you very, very much.
Going to pass the mic to Day or Die. I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. If you'd like to let us know your name and your pronouns, and then I have another person lined up after, if that's okay with Marianne.
Sure. It is Day, he, him pronouns. Hi, Marianne.
Hi.
Hey. So yeah, I just wanted to comment because I think the commentary about the left and post Bernie, how everything's been going, is an interesting one. Because I don't know, to me, it's like it's unfair to hold you accountable for like the heartbreak that people experience with Bernie. It's kind of like you have that one bad breakup and then you let it bleed into all your subsequent relationships. Because to me, it's like we all know that's a self-destructive way to cope. And I got into a conversation about this the other day, and I just try to remind people that you don't have the same pressure to go back to a political campaign, a career, the way that Bernie did. So to me, that gives you a freedom to run like you have nothing to lose, sort of like the way that Obama did in the '08 primary. I think because of the election of Donald Trump and all the talk about, oh, the meanness, we forget just how brutal and intense Democratic primaries used to be in a substantive way. And I think when you look at that '08 primary, Dennis Kucinich, Mike Gravel, Obama, Hillary, they went for it. And I think people have sort of lost that musculature habit because it's just like, oh, well, we didn't get it this first cycle, so forget it. And it's like, what if the people who supported Barry Goldwater had just done that? They would have never ended up with Reagan, which I think would have been great for the country. But, you know, in terms of their political goals, they achieved them. And I wish that people, I had a conversation before our live stream the other day, and someone was like, oh, well, you know, I have nothing against working for Marianne, but I kind of go against the Democratic Party. And so I couldn't do that. And I'm sitting here like, if you base your entire political action based on who the party is and not the candidate, how can you really critique the blue no matter who people? Because you've now just created that on an ideology of anybody but blue. And I don't think that's productive.
I think it's so odd the way Democrats have this codependent relationship with the DNC that the Republicans don't have with their party leadership. Um, it's such a lack of independent thinking. And I was on a interview earlier today, and they said, no president likes incumbent president wants to be primary. And I said, well, so what? He doesn't want to be primary. I said, when I grew up, Eugene McCarthy primaried LBJ, Bobby Kennedy primaried LBJ. They all act like Teddy Kennedy caused Carter to lose. They forget Ronald Reagan had something to do with it. Um, I think primaries are very healthy for democracy. And putting someone down for having the audacity to run for office, it's just very sad to me. It's not the way democracy should be handled. Did I
I
lose?
asked, no, we're here, sorry. I asked for Mercy, I believe your username is, if you would like to introduce yourself and ask your question for Marianne.
Thank you. So I am happy that you're running against Biden. I think it's so important to have a primary and just like, so I'm thank you. I'm really thankful for that. And you guys were talking about transition earlier, and I did transition like in 2007 to university, and well, I started transitioning, and I really feel like this is an important issue. But when I was transitioning back in Canada, where I lived, there were a lot of debate on campus about Palestine and Israel. And I read a poll recently that as a trans person, I care a lot about other people and around the world, and as a socialist. So I know that there is, according to the poll, for the first time ever, there are Democrats that are more sympathetic to Palestinian than Israeli for the first time. So I want to know, because Betty McCollum, she's also an American Democratic Congresswoman, she has urged that not a single dollar of U.S. aid should be used to place Palestinian children in military detention or to tear the home down in illegal occupation. And I want to know if you support that or not, and if not, why not? Because unconditional aid to me seems wrong when we're having an illegal occupation and terror, basically for all these years, people being stripped away from the home being demolished. I want to know why you would or would not support this position of giving unconditional aid to Israel.
Yeah, I think Betty McCallum's bill is a good bill. I would support it.
Okay, thank you. I really
I,
appreciate that.
I just want to give a moment to Soul. He has been posting some viral videos on TikTok. So Tim, if you can give him him or them or she. Sorry, I don't know what your pronouns are. I apologize in advance.
Absolutely.
Um,
I was actually
I
thinking the same thing. And
all the
Marianne,
viral TikToks. So I think we should hear a little bit from Soul about this promoting of Marianne on social media, which I love.
and Marianne, we have a question on the Twitter. Somebody inserted through text wanting to know if you're aware of just how popular you are on TikTok. So I'm going to leave you
Well,
with that and
you,
invite Soulforce.
Yeah, I want to give credit to Christian Perry on our team who's been making all those TikToks. And, it has been very gratifying. And it also speaks to the one sort of demographic that I think gets me, sees me, that I'm feeling quite embraced by. And that's young people right now. I think that, I did a college university tour as part of my processing whether or not I should run. And it was fantastic because, people who are in Gen Z, for instance, they're not even 20th century people. They weren't even either, they weren't born in the 20th century or they just hung out there as babies for a few years. They are 21st century thinkers. And so much of what we've talked about tonight, they're not tied to the old ways. And you're right; they get a lot of their information on TikTok, and I give all the credit actually to Christian Perry, who has been making all those TikToks and putting them on. And I mean, I do have my concerns about TikTok in terms of, anybody who's on it, your information is being mainlined to the Chinese Communist Party, and that's not a joke actually. Um, but those are two separate issues, and so that even when Biden said recently it should be sold, I mean, I don't think that was unreasonable of him, and for that reason. Um, but that's a separate issue. In the meantime, I have been very gratified. And you're right, it's interesting because a lot of the material of mine that's on TikTok has been things from the last campaign, which are just recontextualized. There's so many people who just didn't really hear me. And now they're all like, yay, well, I said it. I mean, yeah, and I'm out there saying it again, so I'm gratified. Yeah, I'm very gratified that TikTok seems to be a place where it's happening for us.
Awesome. Thank you, Marianne. I actually was inspired by your team to create the short form videos. I took your Miraculous Mind course. I'm Jared. I was the small business owner that you mentored a little bit. And I've always been a big supporter of yours. I created that. I call it, we call it a stan TikTok where we're a fan of someone. I created that stan TikTok Friday night, like just 5 days ago. And it already has 11,000 followers, 600,000 plus likes, and 2 million views. So many of the comments are people who did not know you because, your voice. Oh, hello?
Oh, I want to see it. Will you send it to
Oh,
me?
yeah, I'll DM you if I can. Yeah, I'm going to DM you on TikTok. But Marianne, thousands and thousands.
But wait, I don't know how to look at it. How can I?
We can have
Carlos, will you?
Carlos send it
Okay,
to
I'll send
you.
it to Carlos.
Marianne,
Carlos
I'm gonna help you. I'll help you with it, sending you the links. It was
Good.
really
Thank you
exciting.
so
No problem.
much. That's so
And I
exciting.
also want to say this too, guys. I think, and from a Course in Miracles perspective, we really need to nourish our inner peace and read these positive comments and spread these positive things to each other. These trolls, I was researching the psychology of trolls. They have a really high self-esteem and a really high penchant for sadism. So anytime you respond to them, it feeds their ego. So right now, we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to get bigger. For now, just block them, starve their ego, don't engage, and we'll just
Okay.
grow
Thank
our
you.
own. We'll just empower each other and grow our. I think our movement is the way to go. So I'm gonna keep posting you on TikTok because the algorithm also really likes you. I think you're an amazing speaker, and auditorially, that's kind of how content on TikTok travels. And so, yeah, you're all your debate speeches. I think we're honestly, and again, sorry for Course in Miracle people. I think you did channel the Christ mind on the stage, and it's that perfect communication is like hitting so many people online.
Well, please, I can't wait to see. So what's the TikTok address or
Oh,
whatever?
you're gonna love it. Real Democrat 20.
Wow, Carlos, would you help me later to make sure I can see all that?
Of course, I'm gonna make sure you get them right away. As soon as Soul sends them to my DM, I'll have them on your phone in no time.
Wow, that's so exciting. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Y'all have all been so loving and kind, and I am so pleased to be reminded that politics can be kind. And I appreciate it a lot, really, truly. This has been really lovely being with you and talking to you all. And Tim, thank you so much. I have an 8 o'clock, and my person is running up to me now to do an interview. So I need to sign off, but I can't thank you enough. All of you, thank you
This
very,
has
very
been
much.
such a joy. Thank you so much, Marianne, and please get some sleep tonight. No
Thank
3
you.
a.m. tweets.
I'm good. Much love to you guys. Thank you so much for letting me come on.
We love you. Take care, Marianne.
Love
Bye-bye.
you too. Bye bye.